So our next session is on the expansion of global standards, some of those which are applied here in North America, where we have American MLSs who are using multi-language systems to support their customers. We have members in Canada who are using multi-language systems to support their customers. But to give us a bigger picture on expansion of MLS systems, of data standards within North America and across borders, we have Mathew Kallumadil of Stellar MLS and Ethan Bailey of Cotality.
All right. So first of all, thank you, Sam, for having me and us here on the stage, and we're able to talk a little bit about what James Dwiggins really kind of already started that conversation. And that conversation is around how all of this is done outside our comfort zone, which is the North American market. And I'm diving really straight into it. There is no MLS, it was already mentioned, in most places. There is no exclusive representation in most places. There is no buyer representation in most places. There is not a lot of regulation or licensing in most places. So as you can see, that it's hard for us to fathom unless you've kind of tried that and went there and tried to buy something or look for something. But that's kind of the realities of the current situation in most of the world out there. Now, what does that mean really practically out there? It means that brokerages, they're still very brick and mortar. A lot of them are brick and mortar. They all have their own shops where they have posters of their very exclusive inventory. So you can see where I'm going with this. And what does it mean for everybody else in that ecosystem? Sellers, really, they're not really incentivized. Why do you, as a seller, want to just list with one selling agent? Why do you want to have it exclusive? You have no idea how the selling agent performs, what information they have, because they don't have a lot, and you don't know where all your home is going to be marketed. Is it going to go to all the websites that it needs to go? Will I get the best price for this? What is the price of my home? All of these questions are there. So naturally, as a seller, what do? You give it to several agents and hope that one of them bites, and they get the commission, right? That's kind of often the case. Buyers, and James was kind of alluding to this, it's really terrible experience. I'll go into a few details around kind of what you see on websites, but aside from that, you have to kind of go from brokerage to brokerage, look at their exclusive inventory that they hold, make a decision, and then move on. It's really awful. And certainly agents as well. They have no single source of truth for the repository. And how can you be really that expert in your profession without information? So you're mostly kind of a marketer on that front. And it kind of builds the whole conversation on how do you trust the profession and how do you relate to that. It's kind of like a lot of times a glorified car salesman, really, for what it's worth. Now, all of these inefficiencies, there's still, there's prop tech, there's people that try to fill this gap. The lack or the absence of an MLS in these markets is somehow bridged. And so as an example, brokerage CRM systems, as they call them, they fulfill some of that gap of distributing data to these portals. So as a broker, you have your own CRM system, and you put your listing in there, and it shares with some of the portals, sometimes. And we're in a standards conference here. There is no standard there, anywhere. And partly bias representation, for example, is covered by surveyors or even lawyers. And the reason I'm telling you these challenges is that these markets that really want what we have here in North America, they really want this. They have a much different scenario than what we had 150 years ago when brokers came together and set up the MLS, even as a book. It's a very different challenge. But these efficiencies, there's certainly some winners in this. And in most cases, it's the portals. This is Rightmove. Rightmove is the largest, the number one portal in the UK. And what you see here is their average revenue per account, or per agent essentially, over the years. And you see their number of agencies or developers, the number of kind of clients that they have, they are stayed the same for the most part, but the revenue just kept growing. And the reason for that is because they can do so. They can keep hiking up the prices, and there's nothing the real estate agents can do about it, really. They have all the eyeballs. So very profitable, they're doing very, very well. And when we say prices, we're talking about this is a membership-based portal, and the standard package, I think, amounts to around $1,000 to $1,500 US per month for the agent. So you can see how that some people are benefiting from market inefficiencies. But there's other problems, because it's not just the agents that are facing the problems. Here's a good example. This is a nice Italian property. And this is a particularly curious situation. We found this on a website. And everything's the same, so all the data is correct, but it's a duplicate. And what's particularly curious is, and I have no answer to this, is that it's the same brokerage, Engel & Völkers, but somehow they have different logos on there. So you kind of wonder, how did this even happen? Did the portal get two different feeds from different offices, or like from different sources? How did this even happen? Or are they doing it intentionally to get the same listing up there multiple times? It's not clear. But think of it from a home buyer experience. It's like, okay, I'm seeing the same thing. Okay, it is actually the same brokerage, so maybe it's a safe. It's accurate data potentially. But then you start losing trust in the portal, you start losing trust in the brokerage as well. Here's another example. And this is also very curious. This is the same property. This is a property in India, in Chennai. And I kind of highlighted the differences here. First, the price is different. So what you see here is 9.25 CR, or crores. It's a unit of currency there. The square footage is different. And then also the representative listing agent is different. This is most likely, the second one, I think, is most likely a fake listing, which is a very prevalent problem in a lot of these markets. Why is it a fake listing? We hear this all the time. It's slightly lower priced, so they catch the lead. And once this other entity, and this could be anybody really, I think, gets that lead, they have kind of two options. One is they say, oh, if the property is outdated here, they'll just say, oh, well, it's actually already sold, but I have something else for you. Or they go to the listing agent and say, hey, I have a buyer for you, please give me a commission. Now that in itself is not a problem, but the problem is that it's founded on bad information, right? James talked about fair competition. That's not fair competition. Another one, which is not a duplicate listing, it's just represented by two different brokerages, right? Everything's actually, for the most part, the same, square footage, prices, and we've seen all kinds of variations of this, by the way. The description is different, slightly different. But again, as a consumer, you come into this space of total chaos. And again, a lot of this information, when you call them, it's already sold. Aside from that, you have a lot of FSBOs. I've got a couple of slides on that, but that I'm not going to present. But FSBOs are very prevalent, of course, as well. And anybody who's selling a home as a FSBO there, they have no incentive to market as sold. So you have a lot of these dead ends there. So these are the kind of challenges that are out there in kind of the non-US markets there. One more thing, we talk about location, location, location being the most important thing about real estate, right? Left-hand side here, this is a property in Turkey. James, again, was mentioning about this, actually. You don't share the location. Why? Because you don't have exclusive representation. You're not the only listing agent, so you don't want to tell anybody else where this property is, because another agent might just come to my client and offer them a better deal and start making the deal there. the most important thing about real estate is not shared for this reason, right? On the right-hand side, you see a portal called Magic Bricks, one of the big portals in India. They don't even have a map feature. Why, I guess is the question. But they tell you kind of the general area of where the property is, and that's as good as it gets. I was scanning through here. There's nowhere where you can say, map, please. There's no option. Quickly about me. My name is Mathew. I work for Stellar MLS, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself that's kind of more relevant to what we're doing here. I grew up in Austria. I've been there for 20 years before I moved to the UK to study, 10 years there, give or take, and work as well. 2 years in Japan doing research, and now I've been 8 years in Canada. And I'm only telling you this bit here because this kind of experience that I hold and some of my colleagues also hold is absolutely critical when we're dealing with international markets. It's language, it's the understanding of different cultures. It makes all the difference. We've dealt with an entity that refused to talk in English, and they would only engage us because we happen to speak the languages that they speak. The language certainly is the door to the conversation often. And at Stellar MLS, we've created a subsidiary that really was originally created to kind of support domestic initiatives, so here in the United States. But the demand from the global marketplace was so high, we kind of started building out a global team around this. And with our partnerships, so the subsidiary, is called Universal Consulting Opportunities. Amongst us, we've got lots of experience, of course. But with our partnerships, we kind of have a tremendous reach at this point across the world and still growing. And right now, our challenge is really to keep up with the demand. What do? We really help anybody, any organization in any kind of market to move forward with their MLS initiative. And that could be from scratch, or that could be we already have something and we want to grow it or do something different. Now, I haven't talked to you about actually what it means to actually engage some of these organizations, and it gets often more awkward than we like, probably. There's obviously the time zone issues, right? We have a lot of calls early in the morning, a lot of calls late at night, on weekends. In the Middle East, for example, Sunday is the first working day. So there is that. There's obviously currency, language. I talked about cultural differences that really is challenging, to say the least. And the way we want to communicate. India, as an example, almost exclusively on WhatsApp. So we have to be there where our clients, our partners want to be as well. So we pivoted a lot around that as well. And I think this is the most important bit for me, at least, is that these markets have a tremendous opportunity. I told you about all these challenges, but they have a fantastic opportunity ahead of them. And that is, they do not have to follow what we have here exactly, right? They have to adjust it to the markets anyways, but they can really reinvent what they mean with MLS. They don't have to have 500 MLSs in their country. They can just have one. And they can rethink how they're going to structure. So I'm going to talk about 3 of these cases and what they've done very creatively around this. First one here is the Czech Republic. Very smart gentleman, Martin Mucha from Igloo is the company. And Igloo is has its origins actually with Stratus, and Carlos is here. Carlos, if you raise your hand, I don't know if he's outside, but they've built a system that's an MLS system, but it's so much more because they partner with a very large European bank. And this European bank has half of the population of the Czech Republic as their customers. Now you can imagine how this partnership can work very easily. We talked about the mortgage piece to it, right? For somebody starting off as an MLS, it's very difficult to kind of get that momentum. But they've overcome this now with this partnership. Anybody going to that bank to get a mortgage, the bank is telling them, oh, we also have agents, and we have an MLS system where you can start looking at homes, right? That ecosystem is kind of complemented with each other, right? Really fantastic idea. They're doing a great job out there, and we're really blessed to kind of work with them and helping them on the road there. Another example is Romania, one of the kind of first MLSs or MLS initiatives in Europe. Sorin Andrea, he's the general manager at MLS Leader. He's also a broker, actually. And they launched this 15 years ago. And he came in, again, and I haven't really pointed this out, but there's a big lack of understanding of what MLS really means and what it involves, really. But he went innocently into this with saying, hey, there's great software here in the United States. They figured it all out. I'm going to bring this to Romania. And he thought everybody will just jump onto that train right away. And that didn't turn out to be the case. Because you're shifting, it's a big paradigm shift for the business you're doing there. So he had a lot of resistance. But the first part he wanted to do is get inventory. Get some data in that is valuable to attract more people, right? And he came up with this ingenious idea of setting up a call center, and all they do is they look through portals and look for FSBOs. And then they call the FSBO folks, those homeowners, and they get one, they suggest a lead. So they say, hey, is your home not selling? We can suggest you an agent. So there's that bit. But B, they capture the data. Is it already sold? Okay, they put all the data into the MLS system. And now you have a FSBO database that serves as your foundation to help agents that work with him to get some starting point of information, actually, from nothing to actually having some comps, to having some information about what homes cost and are priced at. Ingenious. And the last one before I hand off over to Ethan is Arab MLS out of Egypt. Ahmed is actually a former stellar MLS broker, saw the potential in his home country in Egypt, and went deep into it, I think about 4 years ago, started this initiative, and just earlier, 2 months ago, had the soft launch of the platform. His path, he was at one point at a crossroads where he had to decide, do I want to go by myself in doing this MLS platform? And he could have. Or do I want to partner with the government here? And that he took the much harder government path, but he succeeded. And what this means is now it's the official Egyptian MLS platform. That is the MLS in the country, and that's it, full stop. And all the government properties, and there's a lot, it doesn't quite work like here, but are actually in his system. So the last time I checked, they're aiming at 500,000 listings in there and growing. As far as the latest news was. Super interesting cases, really challenging, as I told, and this is a good time for me to hand off to Ethan, who's going to actually go deeper into this particular use case here.
Okay. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Senior Director of Software Engineering and Architecture at Cotality, the artist formerly known as CoreLogic. I'm in charge of Matrix Software Engineering. Excuse me. I've been on the RESO board, served 2 different terms there. I was the past chair for the Council of MLS Technology Section Council back when CMLS had section councils. And if you go way back much further, my good friend Scott Quinn and I created Inovia, and it had a good 23-year run in the industry. So that's a little bit about me. Wanted to touch on some of the points that Mathew made around the challenges that exist out there and how the MLS model really helps. Not just from a process perspective, but from a technical and standards perspective too, right? Some of the issues that he talked about are really, the risk is reduced, the quality is increased when you have a single source of truth. It really increases trust in the information, and as you know, MLS systems usually have a single database, a single source of truth at least. Exclusive access means that the local practitioners are the ones maintaining the listings. They're adding, they're editing, and that really increases trust in the output as well, right? Because that helps to ensure data integrity, pricing accuracy, status accuracy, consistency of listing information, and it helps thwart duplicate listings. MLS systems and the technologies they provide allow for seamless transactions through things like the Web API. The Web API allows third-party partners to interact with the MLS data. It really, truly, and I know you've heard this many, many times at RESO conferences, it truly reduces the barriers to entry. And that is very critical in a global marketplace because we really need the local technology providers to assist the local practitioners with their software and services. And the data dictionary and the Web API and our transport standards really help ensure that's a possibility. Collaboration is a central point within the MLS system, connecting buyer's agents and seller's agents to facilitate a transaction, but also increasing exposure to the listing information through syndication, through distribution of data to broker and agent websites. Point being, standards underpin it all and really help with the acceleration of growth. We have interesting challenges, though, as Mathew pointed out, and I want to go dig a little bit deeper on 3 of these. But the key point here, though, is RESO provides a really extensible foundation for us to build upon. Sam mentioned this in his opening remarks. We need to keep chipping away at this one use case at a time. But let's talk about location. Mathew touched on this. The US hierarchy of street number, street name, city, state, zip, that doesn't apply in the rest of the world. Some places there's an analog, but most places there isn't. When thinking about Egypt MLS, Ahmed's MLS that we stood up for him, finding property can be done, maybe 50% of the time with that information, but a lot of times it's things like building name, unit number, district, and other fields that aren't within the standard. Plus codes are something that Google created because it's very difficult to find property in rural areas across the globe. So they created this proprietary format for locating a property that takes latitude and longitude and other factors into consideration. I had a conversation last week with Ross Buck from Omni MLS about his market areas, which are Mexico, Central America, and South America. And he mentioned that there are certain properties in rural areas, especially in Central America, that don't have a street number or street name at all. So we have to find a different way to identify the location of these properties. And there's some help, maybe. The International Organization for Standardization, ISO 19160, has some guidance here that might be worth looking into. The next challenge I'd like to dive into is currency. How are you going to handle it? And our friends at Realtina, I think, have done some great work here in advancing the standard and proposing some changes. But if you're a single currency system, or if you have international buyers or you cross borders, then multiple currencies come into play. How are you going to handle that? Are you going to use a currency exchange API and try to keep up with the latest price in real time? Are you going to store those values and periodically update them? Are you going to present them in only the local currency? Or by user preference, if I'm coming in from the US, do I want to see those values translated into dollars? And ISO has some guidance here as well in ISO 4217 that might be helpful. But lastly, and most importantly, I think the biggest challenge is extending the resource attributes and the enumerations that are part of the standard to help better support the global use case. So I mentioned building name, compound name, unit number. There's a lot of administrative areas, prefectures and wards and governorates that should be considered for part of the standard. Our Florida colleagues have done a great job over the past couple of years expanding the waterfront fields and features, but of course they're very US-centric. In the rest of the world, sea is important, right? The Baltic Sea, the Red Sea, et cetera. That isn't part of the standard at the moment, so we need to look at increasing the number of enumerations that we have around waterfront features, right? So sea frontage, sea access, sea view, et cetera. Architectural styles, there are literally hundreds of different architectural styles that represent global residential and other kinds of real estate. I've just included 2 examples here of Muscovite and Baroque, but there are hundreds of different styles that we could consider for expanding the standard. Property types, DACAs, communal apartments. In our preparation call, Sam mentioned that he'd just learned about a property type in Sweden called chain houses. So there's a lot of opportunity here to better represent global real estate. I want to dive a bit more deeply into the Arab MLS use case. Arab MLS is the outfit behind the Egypt MLS that we stood up a matrix system for them in 2023 in English and then an Arabic system in 2024. But a little bit of history first. So Matrix has been multilingual for a very long time, going on over 15 years. We delivered our first multilingual system to Centris. That supported English and French. Over the years, we included Spanish for some of our US customers. And Ross Buck, again, from Omni MLS, launched his Matrix system in 2022 supporting English, Spanish, and Brazilian Portuguese. And he has goals of including additional languages. But underpinning it all of these systems, but especially when I talk about Arab MLS, was supported by the standards promulgated by RESO. We used the Web API to help support their marketplace, to help support their AMS system, and some of the unique use cases they have around it. They've got an interesting transaction approach, pay-per-listing model. Basically, you swipe a credit card to make a listing active and so on. So the standards really helped us accelerate their business and connect their ecosystem of analytics and services. But I want to talk a little bit more about the challenge of handling Arabic. Arabic is a right-to-left language, meaning it's read from the right of the page to the left, much like Hebrew and some other languages. Ours, English, is read from left to right. And that created for us some interesting challenges from a user experience perspective. And I'm not going to linger here too long. I realize it's a data and standards conference, but I do want to just give you some context here. For those of you that are familiar with Matrix, this probably looks very normal to you. Here is the English version of the Egypt MLS. So if I have my profile set to English, this is what I see. But if I'm an Arabic speaker, this is what I see. And you can see that everything is sort of mirror image, right? Because it's not only about the text being read right to left, but the navigation, the user experience has to be oriented in that same way. So navigation starts in the upper right instead of the upper left. The photo is on the right, and of course the text flows from right to left. But there are more interesting things too that you may not be aware of. For instance, a speaker of a right to left language expects the new content is off to their left. So if you're looking at a photo gallery, for instance, as an English speaker, I expect the next photo in that gallery to be off to the right. So I would click the right arrow button or swipe right. An Arabic speaker expects the new content to be off to the left. So they're going to click the left arrow button. They're going to swipe left. And this is beyond just the technology to support it. This is the user experience challenge, which was the most challenging multilingual system we'd ever set up. You do have to change your data storage to be able to support Unicode characters and character encoding because the Arabic alphabet is obviously different than ours, and that's required to be able to store that information. So the UI and the UX is great, but I'm glad you're all very well caffeinated because I'm about to show you Postman screenshots. And whereas at most conferences, that would be the death knell and I'd get the hook. Here, I think it's probably a positive boon. Most of you are familiar with Postman. I really want to show you in a practical way how the standards are put into action. It's kind of hard to do that, but bear with me. So what we have here is a screenshot. I get it's very busy and it's probably quite blurry for the back, so I'm going to try to zoom in on a few things. The important point about this is that I'm making a Web API request. That's what is in the box there at the top. And I'm providing two Arabic strings, one for street name, and that says Al-Falki Street, and one for building name, and that says Green Towers, both in Arabic. And I've tried to blow that up too so that you can see it in the center of the screen. Unfortunately, PowerPoint didn't like the fact that I was mixing languages, so for those sticklers in the room that know that strings should have quotes around them, there are no quotes around those Arabic strings, and the reason is that PowerPoint didn't like it. The RESO standard had no problem with it, however, because I'm able to query the Web API using an Arabic string, and lo and behold, I can retrieve an Arabic payload as well, and that's what you see here in terms of the private remarks. So that's great for querying strings and pulling back the information in a payload, but what about the enumerations? And what I want to show you next is querying the lookup resource two different ways to pull back the local language information. So here at the top, I'm making a lookup resource request, and I'm adding on to that the culture request option. And what you see here is AR-EG. And what this means is show me Arabic of the dialect spoken in Egypt. Here that would be EN-US, the English as is spoken in the US, which as we all know is different than the English that is spoken in the UK. So you can use the culture argument, or to get the same result, you could use the content language header and supply that same AR-EG argument. Regardless, you get the same result, which is the lookup resource for this particular query showing me the annotations, which show me the foreign language that I have requested. So if I am an Arabic speaker and I don't know what Alexandria in English means, I can query the lookup resource with that culture argument and get back the Arabic value and cross-reference the two within my application or service. The whole point of that really was once again to show you that As long as your underlying technology supports foreign languages, supports non-Latin, non-Roman alphabets like ours, the RESO standards will support it. The RESO standards, as Sam mentioned in the introductory remarks, is agnostic, really, to the underlying language and alphabet. So Sam also said, say something that's quotable. So I think these first two are quite quotable. Standards have global application. And more importantly, standards transcend borders. Again, if your technology underneath the covers supports it, the standards will support it. We need additional focus in this area, though. Just like we expand the standard through your hard work to represent US and North American real estate, we need to do the same for the rest of the world. And to eat that elephant, obviously we need to do it one use case, one country at a time, but I implore you, if you have interest in this area, to bring your expertise to bear on helping to improve the standard to support the global use case. I've proposed to Sam that we start a subgroup within Data Dictionary to focus on the international use case. And if you have interest in that, please see me or please see Sam or anyone else from RESO to express your interest. Would love to have you. I'd really love to start chipping away at this issue. That's it for me.
Oh, okay, but everybody's invited, of course, to come to the International MLS Forum in September after CMLS. This is a good opportunity to see what's actually going on. Lots of people from abroad coming to join there. Next year, it's going to be the following year it will be in Abu Dhabi, so it'll be a bit more difficult to get there maybe. So good opportunity. Thank you.